Well, good morning. It's great to be with you here this morning. Trade as a topic, not a lot happened from the last administration, so it's just been a continuation, right? So, I think that, well, I like to emphasize the fact that when it comes to trade and our posture, there's no such thing as, just stagnation or marking time or treading water. We are either gaining or we are losing. And sadly, I think for 4 years of the previous administration, we lost a lot of ground. And so, then because of COVID and the complications of supply chains and so forth, we've had to really respond in different ways. And now we've got tax policy and a few other things in the bill too, but some trade agreements that the administration is working on that I think it is very conceivable that as we get our tax bill in place, that I'm sure the Senate will just rubber stamp, teasing, although they might come to realize after a while that, that House version is pretty well vetted, maybe make a few minor changes before passing that. But to get that bill in place, as well as a lot of trade agreements with various countries, I think that can get us to a spot that will be good for everyone. That will be the rising tide that will lift a lot of ships and enable us to really do great things, get to some other things as well. GSP, MTV, for example, the tariff relief approaches that have proven to be pretty effective, and I think really are about domestic manufacturing more than anything else, and gives the administration some tools to negotiate and make sure that other countries play along as expected with various policies. But as we, yesterday we had a very, I think, productive roundtable with the ambassador from the UK and good bipartisan participation. Incidentally, I think trade is far more bipartisan than it used to be, and I think this is a good thing. I think one of those things that I think the most bipartisan component of trade policy is digital. That just given the geography of U.S. business, that's part of it. But headquarters locations and so forth, that's helpful. But when you look at our U.S. footprint around the world as it relates to digital, and sure it's some big tech companies but it's far more than that. It's even about the little guy who might use a larger platform to sell their products in how many countries around the world. And we need to be mindful of that, and I think that is generating a lot of discussion. But let's rewind to the end of the previous Trump administration, when they basically teed up a trade agreement with Kenya, some good movement with UK at the time as well. But let me use Kenya as an example. That the previous administration, Ambassador Lighthizer, helped tee that up, almost ready to go for a then new Biden administration. Keep in mind, Kenya is already an AGOA country, receives the tariff relief of AGOA. So what was the Biden administration's posture? Well, we'll talk to Kenya, but not about tariffs. I mean, I guess they don't need to talk about tariffs either, because they were already getting the relief from AGOA. And I would typically say that any trade agreement would need considerable time working out the details and so forth before we would have the votes for it. But I actually think that the Trump administration teeing up Kenya, new Biden administration, what a great combination to bring folks together and to get something like that done. And it just didn't get done. Previous administration, they talked about Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, IPEF. It was such a light touch that I've nicknamed it IPUF. And now with more aggressive options. You could call it IPOOF. So, but other countries expected more out of us than even maybe the beginning parts of IPEF. And we should always expect other countries advocating in their own interest, just as they expect us to advocate in our own interest. And it's finding that commonality, those opportunities and synergies that can exist where both sides of an agreement can benefit by reducing barriers. And obviously we've been hearing a lot about tariffs. I'm not a fan of tariffs. I get it. They're a tool in the toolbox. I think the president has also been talking about non-tariff trade barriers. I think that's important when it relates to, say, agriculture and these other countries drum up reasons to keep our products out. Keep in mind, it's not an exchange of products at a higher price that a tariff might lead to. It's about shutting out. And so that's a concern. Now, as you know, we've got various trade agreements on the books, and I think productively so. And looking at various dynamics there, it's important to note that you take Australia, a good friend, with whom we've had a trade agreement longer than I've been here. And right now, they shut out 100% of U.S. beef. They take no U.S. beef. They say it's unsafe. We continue to take theirs, but that's not right. And I point to that as an example of trade is a lot of work. Even if you have a trade agreement, the work is not done. And so we need to engage in a way that can constantly keep up with newer technologies or, say, more creativity from some of our trading partners as it relates to non-tariff trade barriers. And so, but it requires much diligence. And I think the new administration is willing to perform the due diligence necessary to really push hard. Previous administration, I don't think, was. And it's really sad because, like I said, it was lost opportunity. We won't get that back. Our trading partners, our trading competitors gain market share. That's hard to get back. And I think moving forward, we've got, there's a lot at stake and so many reasons to get these deals with various countries. I also know that any deal that might be struck by the Trump administration won't necessarily continue after they leave office unless we actually codify it in Congress or through the legislative process. All of that said, I think that as various discussions happen, I'm not one that wants to codify a generic tariff in statute, even sometimes when that revenue might seem enticing. I think it takes away the agility of the president to make a deal, and I don't want our budget to become dependent on tariff revenue. And I think that's especially important to note. And I don't feel like we're getting huge pressure, thank goodness, to codify these things, codify tariffs, and so I'm encouraged on that front, and also it bears noting that we need to be very vigilant about that moving forward. So as we think, what's next after the reconciliation bill, like I said, I'm hoping that tariff relief programs, the preference programs, will be able to be addressed, especially with some expirations. Expiration of AGOA, for example, in September. There's some great stories and great reasons and evidence of the effectiveness of AGOA. And in fact, for some countries so effective, the question is what's next? And we would not want to, I think, see some damage done because we didn't do our work in terms of not only extending AGOA, but modernizing it and modifying it a bit to take that next step. I look at Africa, for example, a growing population stands to buy more of our products that we're good at exporting, food being one of those, and critical minerals, available workforce. I mean, a lot of reasons to engage more across the continent of Africa as I know we are seeing some strengthening of some domestic opportunities here. And Nebraska, I know, is known as an agriculture state. We also have considerable manufacturing, and I'm proud that we have several small manufacturers, some larger ones too, but that we've got a lot happening there. It's a reminder to how important federal policy is ultimately to the little guy, a manufacturer, but then, as you know, ultimately for consumers across our country. And Kevin Brady was always very good at articulating, and still is, articulating that, buy American, that's great. We also need to remember we want to sell American. And so I represent a district with more cattle than people, and they're not permanent residents, so let me just say that. And the ingenuity that goes in, the efficiency of processing, and how we can help provide protein for the world, it is amazing. And we have a new processing plant opening in Nebraska that is primary investors are local ranchers. Minority investor is Walmart, wants to have a closer relationship with the products that they sell in that processing. And so just attended the ribbon cutting a few weeks ago, and the critters are running through there now. And so it's just important that we not have barriers to selling their product, or even this plant coming together and developing. And there's a lot at stake, with their investment, and certainly we as consumers can benefit ultimately from more innovation through processing and a lot of things that we're involved in that